What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Content Clubhouse presented by The First Call. This week, an excellent conversation with Teal Barber. You may know him from his A Day at the Country Club skits on Instagram and TikTok, a guy who's made a massive brand and following out of making fun of the grandiose, snobbish, wealthy country club lifestyle that golf has been known for so long. And yet, as a result of that, he's starting to find himself running in a lot of those same circles. We go into the irony of that, his comedic background as both a child actor and a stand-up comedian, as well as his real skill with a golf club. I mean, he's a former PGA professional too. So how all of that blends together into his extremely unique brand and what's coming up next for him. So without further ado, here's a conversation with Teal. Welcome back to another episode of the Content Clubhouse podcast, where I'm thrilled to be joined today by Teal Barber. You may know him for his Day at the Country Club skits. Teal, basically like Rodney Dangerfield's character from Caddyshack, although I know we're about to talk about golf content creation, so for a lot of the younger people listening to this, that reference might be lost on them. But Teal, I just want to go ahead and dive straight into your super unique brand and voice that you found in the golf content creation niche. You know, for a sport that forever was as old and white and uncool as it could possibly be, golf is now more diverse and more culturally relevant than it's ever been, thanks in no small part to creators like yourself. But where folks like Roger Steele or maybe Tisha Allen are bringing their own angle and personality to the game, you're kind of doing that, but while making fun of the way that kind of golf used to be and still is in a lot of places, with your comedy and with your satire. How did you land on that voice? It's so unique and so special within this space. How did you kind of find that niche?
Yeah, well, first of all, Nathan, thanks for having me. Highly appreciate it. And, you know, it's been such an interesting journey to create this brand that I have. It is a natural journey, really, that happened. It started, I always kind of give people the spark notes, of my journey, which is, I grew up as a child actor from the time that I was 6 years old, and a lot of plays, commercials, and movies, voiceover work, some modeling as well. And my grandfather, though, was actually a scratch golfer. So while I was growing up, I, would hang out with him. He would go to the golf course a lot, and I never really showed a whole lot of interest in it. But he was a guy that just loved being out on the course, and he was just really good. So I remember it was probably one Father's Day when I was like my maybe eighth grade, so yeah, seventh or eighth grade in middle school. I decided to go out with him, my father, my uncle, and we're taking the cart around, and they said, Teal, why don't you get up here and hit a ball? And I finally said, you know what, I'll get up there and hit. And the first I remember was this old little tailor-made 3 wood, and I hit it, and it just was a perfect shot the first time I'd ever picked up a club. And they're all standing there like, holy shit, like what just happened? And ever since then, I really didn't set down the clubs. So I just kept on practicing and honing in a game. And I wasn't great, of course, beginning. You try to figure out how to play this game. So, and then I didn't know anything about golf. So I went in to my grandfather's basement when I told him I was finally interested. And he had all these amazing staff bags. And he said, go pick a set down there. And me not knowing anything about golf at the time, I went and picked up the shiniest set. It was this red Wilson staff bag and these blades. And so basically picked the hardest, set that he had down there. He's like, you sure you want those? And I'm like, yeah. And fast forward, I think that that's actually one of the reasons I'm quite accurate with my irons is because I learned on those blades. And, if you miss hit a blade, it hurts. So basically, fast forwarding to now, how I built this, brand where I'm making fun of the world that I live in is, I always had that passion for acting, right? I thought that that's what I was going to continue to do. After I graduated high school, I had auditioned for Juilliard. I made it to the last cut. And then when I didn't get in, I was like, well, you know what? Let me focus and make sure I actually have a nice business background. So I went to Campbell University and got a double major in marketing and golf management. So I became a PGA professional. And when I graduated, I was just going to continue on in acting. But I had actually gotten a call from one of my mentors, and he was like, hey, there's a great country club here in Richmond, Virginia, my hometown, and they're looking for somebody to take over the club as a head pro. And I was like, 23-year-old black guy being asked to take over a country club. I was like, I kind of have to do that. So ended up becoming the head golf professional at Hanover Country Club when I was 23, and I ran it successfully for about 5.5 years. But at the same time, while I was in college, And in that professional world, I was making these funny satirical skits about the elite, wealthy country club world that I lived in. And until it became what it is today now with all these millions of views. So I stepped down from the country club probably 2 years ago to make sure I could only focus on the entertainment side of my life. So that's kind of the very condensed version. Of course, there's so many things in between on how I've built this to what it is, but it's been such an amazing, cool journey, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll certainly get into a little bit of the details in there, but again, not surprising at all, in the research for this to find out that you were a child actor, just because it comes through so like clearly in your content. Because again, unlike a lot of folks out there who are doing awesome golf content that's just kind of, going out to the course, filming, like you really have obviously some great creative direction and delivery and everything else kind of in your content. So from that perspective, in terms of what's the nuts and bolts of the content that you're producing and the style of content that you produce, kind of, I imagine you have a much different creative process than probably a lot of other folks. Can you take us a little bit inside what that looks like for you as your full-time gig?
Yeah, so I mean, my creative process is simply, a lot of times it can be as simple as an idea coming, to my brain, like, or it could be an experience that happens, in life. That happens a lot to me where there's an experience that takes place. I'm out, in Aspen and I'm having this conversation with, some friends while we're going down the slopes, or I overhear something at this table that is just absurd and hilarious because, rich people do a lot of absurd and hilarious things, and I'm lucky enough to be in a lot of these circles over the years. So what I do is basically what happens is, let's say there's an idea I really want to get across. Well, I start with, okay, I have it in my brain. Then I kind of put it on paper. This is how I want it to flow. Write it out. I write out, the things that I want to say in the video, the things that the other people that may be involved either need to say or do. Like I really am quite specific on it. And then once I kind of have that, then takes place the planning. Okay, where am I shooting this at? Is this a quick iPhone video, or is this something that I really feel like I need some great cameras for and different angles? And a lot of times I try to make it as natural a feel as possible. And it's funny because I'm almost a little too good at it, because a lot of times people don't know whether or not, I am this, rich asshole in real life, or, nice guy. Because when people come up to me on the street, I take so many photos all over the place, of people. And when they come up, they always say, "Man, I'm so surprised. I wasn't expecting you to be so nice." And I'm like, well, I am like in real life, I'm a nice guy, I really am. Like, that's the character online, it's completely different. And I try to separate that, and I try to add a level of absurdity in the videos that you would, of course, hope that that really isn't actually how I would think or say. But, you can't make everybody believe everything. So it's funny.
Yeah, definitely the
Yeah.
sarcasm and the irony is always going to be lost on some people, I guess. But
Yeah, it's like it's satire. That's what it's all about. And I think that that's, to me, that is true comedy, when you have that satire that you're actually making fun of the real things in the world. The real spoils of the world. I love making fun of stuff like that. And I've been around so many different things where I just see crazy shit all the time, and that's where I derive my content from those ideas, and then I say, okay, I think that somebody will find this funny.
mm,
You know.
well, clearly a lot of people, definitely have found it funny. But I'm curious, coming from, because you obviously had that perspective of that lifestyle from being next to it and now very much in it yourself. Did that ever kind of ruffle any feathers? Be that at the golf court, at the club that you worked at, or kind of in some of these circles you're finding yourselves now, or are they kind of like, oh no, you find that the people who you're almost poking fun at laugh at it just as hard as the rest of us do?
So it's kind of been a little bit of both. I remember early on when, like, a lot of when I was still the head of the club and videos started to take off, there were definitely a little bit of ruffled feathers, just because they were like, hey, you're at the top of the club and you're like making fun of the club life. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's what it's all about. It's like, it's about, I'm not making fun of you guys. I'm not doing it. Some people didn't think it was appropriate. They were like, it's not appropriate for the head golf professional to be making these videos, where some things that I would say are, I'm talking about like my mistress, or talking about this, all kinds of stuff, that they were just like, oh my god. But after a while, once they realized, just how good the satire was, a lot of those people even came around and they were like, oh my god, this is just electric. And then it really started to take off even further. And that's why my fan base is so diverse. I mean, I have guys that will, of course, a lot of people know me for talking about, pointing the Rolex towards the target, and so I have guys that'll message me every day talking, showing me their 20th Rolex. But I also have guys that message me saying, hey, Teal, you've inspired me to hopefully one day be able to afford a Rolex. So I have a very diverse fan base. So you get the guys that I'm making fun of, they love it. And then also it's like the people that really haven't, it seems like to me, a lot of the reason people follow me and enjoy the content so much is because I'm almost giving them like a bird's eye view, a first person look at this world that maybe they don't know as much about or haven't experienced some of the things that kind of go on in these elite circles.
Definitely. And two, again, just to give you some more credit on the comedy side, like there's a lot of folks in the golf space particularly that are trying to have that aspect, right? Because a lot of what's successful on social media, I mean, people like to laugh. So when you look at some of the top creators, to a certain degree, that is some of what they're doing. But you actually have some professional background in doing that. I know you've done some stand-up and, of course, the childhood acting. How did that background really serve you in kind of what you're doing now?
hmm Well, I'm not a guy that like, I'm not asking for credit or, anything like that type of thing. But I think that I always knew the reason why I went down the lane that I wanted to, right, is that I know that we live in a world where there's a lot of bad things constantly happening. And I thought the most shareable content would be comedy, things that would, when they saw this video, they would either want to laugh with me or laugh at me and send it to their friends. And luckily I was right. And I really laid, before I was as big as I am now on Instagram, I was, big on TikTok first. And I really feel like I laid quite the foundation with my Day at the Country Club series for a lot of other golf creators to feel empowered to step into that comedy lane. There was a lot of people that, before they were only making these, kind of play a hole with me type of, everybody doing the same generic thing. But they started to see, not only was my comedy being well received, but brands weren't also angry at it either. So I think that it opened up the doors for a lot of people. You see so many different types of skits now that are similar to mine, where people are stepping into that kind of comedy satirical lane, making fun of the golf world that I've been doing for, years and years now. And they're finally stepping into it because I think they see how well it can do and they feel empowered to do it. So I feel, lucky to be somewhat of a trailblazer in that sense, but also, have my own fruits as well from it.
Yeah, you brought up a really interesting point there about, you know, making it, I don't know if acceptable is the right word, but basically proving that the concept can work, right? Not only from an audience perspective, will people like, enjoy this, share it, but from the business side of like, will brands that are such like the lifeblood of, financially of making content, will they get on board with this? What have those conversations been like with some of the brands you've worked with? I know we'll get into a little bit about your own cigar label and your own apparel label, but in terms of working with other brands, were they always receptive from the jump, or did you have to have some kind of careful explaining, I'm not really this guy, or I think this is an act kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Well, I think that, it's been dynamic, right? So obviously every brand isn't going to be for you. There's some brands that are more stringent on certain things and others that are more open. But one thing that I've seen, not even just from my experience, but I think you could see it from, various creators now, is brands are understanding more and more that the way that you connect with that celebrity or creator's audience is making sure that the creator is still able to create the content in their organic fashion, right? And then we incorporate that brand into our type of content. So if they can't handle, my type of content, then I'm just simply not doing the deal. So like I've had wonderful partnerships. I had a nice long-term partnership with Icon Pass last year, of course, because I've been an avid snowboarder my entire life as well. And they knew that part of the reason they actually reached out to me was because they wanted, to highlight that kind of funny higher lifestyle that is experienced at some of their mountains and resorts, right? So, and they needed to add that comical twist because they know that gets the shares. So while I'm at the same time trying to tell people to go buy icon passes, really I'm just showing the experience in a funny way that then people would say, well, actually I'd like to go do that. And how do I do it? Well, I go buy an icon pass. Same thing for, my long-term partnership with Shipsticks right now. They know my type of content. That's why they reached out, and they're like, hey, we want a younger, wealthier demographic to start using our shipping service instead of um, flying with their clubs. And, not only did I have the huge debacle with American Airlines, where they destroyed my clubs, and that got, so millions upon millions of views and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I also travel a ton, so they know it's a natural integration, right? So it's a little bit of, does the brand fit with what you're currently doing? And then you also as a creator have to know when to say, you know what, it's just not a right fit. Like, I don't need to try to force this thing,
Yeah, definitely a huge part of it. And you bring up a good point about the fact that, yeah, like they wouldn't, I guess, be approaching you if there wasn't at least an entry level of willingness to kind of cooperate with that, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
I think, my advice to any creator would be you're better off being yourself, You're better off being yourself than trying to say, I'm going to be palatable to brands. I've seen that actually cause people to take a downturn. People spent so much time trying to create this content that they thought would fit brands well that they lost their secret sauce, right? And they lost the whole reason why people are, following them. I get an email every day from some type of brand, right? I could make $1,000 every day if I wanted to from something random, right? A teeth whitener that I'd put on my story, but I would start to dilute my brand, right? How many times a week do my fans want to see me promoting some type of product like that, before I actually start to take the downturn, and that's what you don't want to see.
Yeah. Well, I think too, you've reached a point, and so have a lot of creators kind of at that level to where you're almost, a lot of these partnerships are not so on the surface. Do you have any kind of examples of that, or what that's like, I guess working with companies where it's not every week a 10-second reel, but maybe it's experiences that you're doing and you're working their brands much more subtly into the content that you're doing. How does that work?
Yeah, so once again, going back to that natural integration, right? Like, I'm currently the face of a brand called Black Circle Society, and that's a kind of membership community. I don't know if you've ever heard of Epic Golf Club, but it was created by the same founder of Epic Golf Club. And what they are is you have to be a member of a private club to join Epic. And then you have access to all these clubs around the world where, let's say I'm having a business trip in Atlanta. I can call the concierge and say, hey, look, instead of me trying to search for like a tee time, on Golf Now, right? I call my concierge and say, hey, look, I'm going to be in Atlanta for business. What courses do we have? And then not only will they be able to book you a tee time, but then you'll have a member, to possibly play with, a fellow at the golf club member to play with while you're in town there. Um, so with Black Circle Society, what they've done is we've said, okay, now we're going to target the guy that, wants that type of level, but maybe he's not quite there yet. We're talking about the guy that, is making about maybe $75,000 to $150,000 a year. He does well, but he's not necessarily at that centurion level yet, With Black Circle Society, essentially, you have, it's a membership community of people where you can access all the discounts, all the, services and, health and brands and things that a lot of elite people will have access to, but at a much more accessible level. So how I promote that is basically via the experience. So like I had, those floor tickets at UFC, right? And while I was in Miami, I'm showing off the experience, and how I got that was being a member of Black Circle Society. So a lot of times now you don't have to be so front facing. It's very rare that you'll see in a video where I'm going, hey, use my discount code, blah, 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 to, or click the link in bio, to access 25% off. It's more so, hey, look at what me having access to this thing got me.
Yeah. And those are, I got to imagine, the ideal brand partnerships, right? Where it's more getting the cool experiences, but also staying much more within your lane of content, not feeling so forced, right? With a script or something to read.
Exactly. I think that that's what everybody should strive for. You want to strive, to me, long-term deals, right? Deals that last at least 6 months to a year, so that you actually start to grow with the brand, because that's what people, your fans want to be told the story, especially my fans, at least, I think that a long-term strategy allows, not only you to show more proof of concept, but also for the brand to get a better return on investment, right? Because I mean, I'll take $10,000 every day for one video if you want. If you want to give me that, that's fine. But at the same token, I would rather not do that. I'd rather have a long-term structure on a deal because I can make one video for you and it may go viral or it may not, right? But if we have a long term strategy where over the course of months, the brand is slowly getting assimilated with mine and people, relate that brand to me and they trust what I'm saying about it, then that's how that brand is actually starting to then take from my fan base and start to move those people over versus just hoping that one video happens to do well.
Yeah. Well, moving from kind of the external business of it to kind of your own. So again, like with a lot of these people who build that foundation of social media success and a following, a lot of times the next step is, okay, how do I kind of build a personal business out of that? Tell us a little bit about the cigar label, the on business merch you've got going on, and how did you get that started?
Yeah, so I think that what I've always liked to say is that I would like to be the cake and I would like the brand deals to be the icing, right? Meaning that, I've built this amazing brand that reaches millions of people every month. I'm gaining 1,000 or more followers every week on Instagram right now. How do I leverage that without necessarily worrying about a brand deal? So you got to say, what businesses can I create from it? So that's where I was thinking about, well, it has to be passion. It has to be things that I like. Ever since I was 18, I smoked cigars, and that's when my father first, gave me my first cigar on my 18th birthday. Ever since then, I had enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about the process of how cigars are made, all of that, and I thought that maybe one day that I would, you know, maybe want to make my own brand of cigars, but I wasn't sure that it would ever happen. But now having the fan base to be able to activate upon, right? I said, okay, this is a great time, and was able to find a great partner in it in Greenside Cigars with Ty Murphy, and so that's how we were able to bring the Country Club cigar to life. And here is one of the boxes right here, lovely box. So this is available at thecountryclubcigar.com, and it's been such a beautiful thing because it's a true product out out of passion, right? It's not a product where that people would be surprised. My fans are used to seeing me with cigars, so it wasn't like, all of a sudden I popped up with a cigar brand and they're like, well, we've never even seen Teal smoke a cigar. This is, more so they know me for that, and it would be a great natural integration. And then, I think about things that mean a lot to me. I struggle with Lyme disease, and it still affects my life today. So, $10 of every box goes to the Global Lyme Alliance. And I think doing things like that is, very important too. It's like, how can I use my brand for good? And for things that also mean a lot. And I think that that resonates with your fan base too, when they know it's not just about you just trying to, become wealthier from a product, but also, helping the world in some way, shape, or form. And I think that type of stuff is really important when you have a platform like mine or even bigger.
Totally. And before we get you out of here, want to have kind of ask you about some of the cooler things you've been up to. I know you're at the PGA Championship, cool video with Jonathan Stewart, Panthers running back. But to the point you just made, though, about building the right brand and doing things for the right reasons, I guess if you have one, what's the end goal here? What determines success for you in all of these things?
Well, I think it's ever evolving, right? My friends always make fun of me. They say, and it'll probably be on a magazine cover as the title one day, but they always joke that, how is Teal Barber slowly becoming rich off of making fun of the rich, And I wouldn't say that I'm anywhere near rich yet, but I do get what they're saying. It's fun. It is funny. And it's not something that I ever expected. And the reason why I say that is because um, if you follow the passion, then the other things kind of happen, after a while. And I've just always really, really loved making people laugh, right? I love entertaining people. And that is what I've done. So when I was first making that content and still running a country club, I had no expectations for my brand to end up where it is now because I was simply doing it for fun, and I get 1,000 messages every week of, and a lot of those messages will say in my Instagram DMs, hey, how can I become famous too? How can I build a thing? And I'm like, well, if that's your goal, then it's probably not going to work out, And all of the celebrities that I've become friends with, the people that follow me, like Steph Curry, Victor Cruz, any of these, Anthony Anderson, actors, all these people that follow me and talk to me as well, and also have now treated me like a fellow friend and celebrity of theirs, and that's a whole crazy thing that I, sometimes have imposter syndrome over. But when I sit down and talk to them while we're appearing at some of these same events, I always ask them like, hey, did you ever have any, thoughts of you being at this level of fame or this level of notoriety? And they say, well, no, I just really, enjoyed what I did, right? So like, obviously Steph Curry, just a really, really great basketball player, right? One of the best of all time. And as a result, he's very, very famous. Anthony Anderson, funny, awesome actor. As a result, very famous. It's like, you have to find the passion. You have to find the thing. So my goal is I've created this thing that people love, and I just want to continue to foster it. I want to, have a wonderful stand-up tour that my fans can see me in person and, enjoy. I want to, get back into doing more movies and TV shows. I want to produce my own things and help, grow that, help grow other people as well, include different people that are creative like me and, want to just create for the sake of creating, because money is important, right? I always say, and actually I'm going to put this in one of my videos soon, right? The only people that ever say money doesn't buy happiness tend to have a shit ton of money, right? It's always after you have a ton of money that you're able to say, oh my God, it doesn't do anything, guys. Once you have it, I'm telling you, it doesn't do anything for you. It's like, well, it's easy for you to say, right? But money is also a social construct. If it wasn't money, it would be something else. I would create, if money didn't matter, I would still be making videos on social media. I'd be making people laugh because that's what I love to do. So at the end of the day, I feel like as long as I stay true to that, I'll always be successful in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you mentioned some very cool interactions. I like to try to at least get some cool opportunities to name drop some cool events or some cool folks you've hung out with. So again, talking about the PGA Championship inside the ropes, shaking hands with Scotty coming off the green. First, tell us a little bit about that, and then kind of where does that rank so far very early on in your career of getting to do some really cool stuff as a result of this golf content creation?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Scotty Scheffler's huge right now, right? He's doing some things that we haven't seen since Tiger Woods. So to be one of the first people to congratulate him after a major championship victory, I mean, come on now, you can't beat that. And it just goes back to me, being friends with great people, that's how I end up in these situations. All from the outside looking in, I'm able to make it look very seamless, but there's a lot that happens in the background. It's a network type of thing. Who do you befriend and who do you foster relationships with? That's how I end up inside the ropes on a major championship Sunday, not by, weaseling my way into things or hoping that something happens. Like, that is relationship 101 that puts me in those types of positions. So yeah, being able to congratulate Scotty right after that win, I mean, that's up there pretty high. Obviously, like I said, being able to, like, the fact that I can message, somebody like Steph and he will respond, like, it's pretty insane. It's like, aren't you supposed to be, like winning championships or something, on the basketball court? Like, that's cool stuff. That's really cool. And, you know, I try not to get too jaded in that type of thing, not pay too much attention to it, but it is a very cool thing, and I feel blessed and lucky for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, we look forward to following what's next. Again, appreciate you coming on. For those listening, definitely check Teal out across all socials at @the_black_rain on Instagram, at Teal Barber on TikTok. Definitely check out the website, tealbarber.com. You can get the cigars, you can get the merch, get everything you need. Again, appreciate the time, Teal, and good luck with everything.